Today, we will use a scientific perspective to explore the complex truth behind meteorological events. According to the latest news from the Los Angeles Times news website, a strong Pacific storm hit coastal cities in Southern California from December 21st to 23rd. Heavy rains severely flooded houses and streets, and some cities were paralyzed. Torrential rains hit Ventura and Santa Barbara counties in northwest Los Angeles County overnight, flooding areas in the cities of Port Hueneme, Oxnard, and Santa Barbara. In the early morning hours of December 21st, rainfall exceeded 3 inches per hour, causing flash flooding in Ventura County. Later in the morning, the storm brought another wave of flooding, with water starting to accumulate on streets in parts of Santa Barbara. By midday, the rain and wind had subsided, and residents ventured outside to view the damage. Thank you for liking, leaving comments, subscribing, and turning on the little bell. We will update every day. The city of Port Hueneme issued evacuation orders for residences on 4 streets and warned of possible evacuations on 4 other streets. About 60 homes are affected by the order, all in seniors' communities. An evacuation center was set up at the university gymnasium. Out of an abundance of caution, 3 people in the senior community were taken to the hospital, and there were multiple instances of drivers being rescued from flooded vehicles. The National Weather Service issued a tornado warning for the cities of Oxnard and Ventura due to high-severity thunderstorms, but no tornado activity was immediately observed. A total of about 27 million people live in areas where flood warnings remained in effect Thursday afternoon, including much of the Los Angeles and San Diego metropolitan areas. Los Angeles International Airport had 40 flights delayed and 1 canceled throughout the day Thursday. Despite Thursday morning's storm, the Oxnard Union High School District, which has schools across Ventura County, remained open. Oxnard and Hueneme elementary and middle schools are on winter break, according to the district's website. Floodwaters were 2 to 3 feet deep in parts of Ventura County. The county fire department received 275 calls in a 5-hour period, a staggering increase from the 190 calls expected per day, said Daniel Swain, a climate scientist at the University of California, Los Angeles. Particularly in Oxnard, heavy downpours occurred overnight, and preliminary data indicate this may be the largest downpour ever observed in this area of Southern California. National Weather Service meteorologist Mike Wofford said the frequency of such events is about once every 1,000 years. The center of the low-pressure system slowly moved south away from the coast as storms swept through Northern California early last week. Forecasters describe it as a cutoff low, a storm isolated from the general west to east flow that could linger for several days, increasing rainfall. This system produces sporadic bands of precipitation rather than widespread rainfall. Low pressure moves slightly away from the coast on Thursday, taking away moisture and allowing some sunshine, but it will return. In recent times, the United States has been frequently threatened by storms and floods. Our channel has tracked and reported dynamic news about storms on the East Coast. On December 17th, low-lying areas in South Carolina experienced severe flooding due to heavy downpours caused by the storm. Many roads remain closed. Charleston's tide gauge swelled to the city's 4th highest level ever recorded. About 4 inches of rain fell in Charleston. Dozens of roads were closed and streets were littered with stranded cars. Rescue crews in the seaside community of Georgetown, South Carolina, rescued dozens of motorists trapped by floodwaters. More than 9 inches of rain fell in the area. Emergency water rescues were also conducted on Kiowa Island and Seabrook Island, according to media reports. Since the storm, there have been more than 31,000 power outages in South Carolina, more than 14,000 in North Carolina, and more than 11,000 in Florida, according to statistics. The Weather Service said the storm was moving along the Georgia and Carolina coasts, producing heavy rain and gusty winds. Wind gusts of 35 miles per hour to 45 miles per hour could blow down trees, especially on saturated ground. New York Governor Kathy Hochul warned of 2 to 4 inches of rain, strong winds, and flooding in parts of the state. Flood warnings were in effect for many parts of New York City, and wind warnings were also in effect around the city and Long Island. Meanwhile, the storm dumped up to 5 inches of rain on Florida, flooding streets and forcing the cancellation of boat parades and other holiday festivities. Coastal warnings were issued for much of Florida as strong winds churned up coastal waters in the Gulf of Mexico and North Atlantic. In fact, the United States is frequently hit by hurricanes and storms and poses a threat of flooding for complex reasons. First, the southeastern United States is close to the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean, both of which are breeding grounds for tropical cyclones and hurricanes. The hurricane season in the United States is from June to November every year. Tropical cyclones generated in the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean will move inland, along the southeastern coastline of North America, causing hurricane strikes. Florida, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, and states along the East Coast are all hardest hit by hurricanes. Secondly, the Gulf Stream and Atlantic warm current pass through the offshore southeastern United States, providing sufficient heat and water vapor for tropical cyclones. These strong ocean currents make the seawater temperatures along the southeastern coast of the United States higher, which is very suitable for the generation and intensification of tropical cyclones. After a tropical cyclone gains enough energy, it will gradually intensify into a hurricane, producing strong winds and large amounts of precipitation. In addition, terrain effects are one of the reasons why the United States is vulnerable to hurricanes. When a hurricane makes landfall from the sea, the topography will cause the hurricane to move upward. The storm's tropospheric structure is disrupted, allowing the hurricane to unleash greater power. Precipitation from storms can accumulate over a short period of time, increasing the risk of flooding and landslides. The existence of the Appalachian veins hinders the hurricane's progress and also blocks the hurricane along the southeastern coast, aggravating local losses. What cannot be ignored is that due to the influence of global warming, the sea surface temperatures in the North Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico have been higher in recent years, which is conducive to the generation of more and stronger hurricanes. As a result, the southeastern coast of the United States is experiencing more frequent and more intense hurricane strikes. Scientists predict that the number and intensity of hurricanes will increase in the coming decades, putting the southeastern United States at greater risk. It is worth mentioning that the southeastern United States is low-lying and densely populated. The average altitude of many coastal cities in these areas is less than 5 meters, and they face major threats from floods caused by storm surges and hurricanes. At the same time, the southeastern coast is also the most densely populated area in the United States, with a high degree of urbanization. A large number of people and infrastructure are exposed to the front line of hurricane disasters, which undoubtedly increases the losses and impacts of hurricane disasters. When encountering a flood outdoors, It is very important to take some measures in order to effectively escape and avoid losses to the greatest extent. First of all, find high ground for safety as soon as possible. If you are in a low-lying area of a plain or river valley, you should quickly move to surrounding highlands, such as hills, high platforms, and top floors of houses to avoid the spread of floods. If there is no high ground nearby that you can move to, at least climb to a higher tree for temporary shelter. This is the most direct and effective escape method. Secondly, avoid being swept away by floods and causing drowning. When a flood comes, never enter the water directly or try to fight the flood. This will cause you to lose your balance and be swept away by the powerful torrent. When you are unable to escape to high ground in time, you can hold on to structures such as trees or houses to prevent yourself from being carried away by the flood. Next, maintain physical strength and body temperature while waiting for rescue. The most common injuries that occur during flooding are exhaustion and hypothermia. At this time, you can reduce walking and verbal communication to save energy, and at the same time, keep warm by curling up and wrapping yourself in clothes. Make a fire for warmth if necessary. What cannot be ignored is to wait for rescue where possible. Unless there is a serious life threat, do not leave the shelter easily. Moving around not only consumes physical energy, but also makes it easy to get lost and fall into new dangers. You should indicate your location through open flames, signs, calls for help, etc., and follow rescue instructions. It is worth mentioning that contact with electrical facilities should be avoided. During floods, many power poles will collapse, posing a risk of electric shock. At the same time, electrical appliances such as house appliances cannot be used, as this may cause fire or electric shock. Therefore, you must not touch any electrical facilities during floods. Particular care must be taken to avoid direct contact with the flood water itself. Pathogens, chemicals, and various pollutants in floods may cause skin diseases, digestive tract diseases, and even more serious infections. Unless the hygiene and safety of floodwaters can be ensured, direct contact with them should be avoided as much as possible. In addition, strictly follow the instructions of rescue personnel. After the professional rescue team arrives, they must obey their arrangements and commands. Do not act without authorization or move to a location where they cannot be found, as this will greatly hinder rescue efforts. What must be mentioned is the need to obtain disaster relief materials in an orderly manner and not to seize or hoard them. After receiving rescue, you must receive food, drinking water, medicine, protective equipment, etc. in order. You must not rob or extort, nor hoard to affect others' access to rescue. In addition, minor physical injuries should be treated as quickly as possible. After flood rescue, it is necessary to clean up the body immediately, treat minor trauma, and prevent infection. Seriously injured patients should first be removed from dangerous situations and then seek medical treatment. More importantly, contact family and friends as soon as possible to let them know your safety. Once rescued, inform relatives and friends of the current situation by phone or other means as soon as possible. If a traveler becomes separated, they should also pass on safety information to each other. When faced with the threat of an approaching storm, cities and communities can take some steps to effectively reduce the impact and losses of the storm. First, we need to strengthen the disaster resilience of infrastructure construction, such as improving the standards of drainage systems and expanding the diameter of sewers to ensure that they can cope with extreme rainfall, raising river embankments to withstand higher floods, and equipping telephone poles and communication base stations with emergency power supplies to prevent collapse. These measures can prevent the city's infrastructure from completely collapsing during a storm. Secondly, a flood control system must be formed by building berms, digging flood relief channels, and building flood storage areas and wave breakers to divert, guide, and store floods to reduce the pressure on the urban defense line. And these facilities are regularly maintained and upgraded. Formulate scientific urban planning and construction requirements, such as restricting the construction of residential areas in low-lying areas and coastal areas, and strengthening windproof and waterproof requirements for building structures to withstand strong winds and floods. This reduces storm losses at the source. In addition, reserve medical supplies and emergency resources. Cities must stockpile medical supplies, water drinks, candy, protein bars, etc. in advance, and designate shelters and shelters. This will help residents stay fed and receive medical attention during the storm. Improve the rescue system and emergency plans, set up specialized agencies to coordinate disaster relief work, and sign rescue agreements with neighboring cities so that support can be quickly obtained in the event of a disaster. This will greatly improve rescue efficiency. More importantly, it is necessary to improve public awareness of storms and popularize disaster prevention knowledge. Through media tools, safety response methods during storms are widely publicized to let the public understand basic risk avoidance principles. Disaster prevention drills are also held to improve the public's risk awareness and escape skills. After the passage of the storm, recovery and reconstruction work must be carried out immediately to support the affected residents in rebuilding their homes as soon as possible and returning to normal production and life. At the same time, we summarize experiences and lessons and continuously improve the city's ability to cope with extreme disasters. What cannot be ignored is the need to establish a complete early warning information release and monitoring system. Before a storm approaches, meteorological information must be used to quickly and accurately predict the possible path of the eye, precipitation intensity, etc., and be released to the public immediately. River water level monitors must also be installed to instantly grasp the spread of floods. By taking the above measures, cities and communities can mitigate and respond to the negative impacts of storms to a large extent and avoid loss of life and property to the greatest extent. This requires the joint efforts of the government, business, and the public to become a reality. There are some countries and regions that have rich experience in dealing with storms and floods, and the measures and methods they have adopted are worth learning from. First is Japan. Japan has a diverse climate, frequent extreme meteorological events, and has rich historical experience in dealing with disasters. Japan has done very well in the construction of disaster prevention system, disaster risk assessment, disaster monitoring and early warning, construction of disaster prevention and reduction projects, and mass disaster prevention education, and has formed a very complete disaster prevention system. At the same time, Japan also has a developed disaster emergency rescue system, which can quickly carry out rescue after a disaster occurs, greatly reducing the loss of life and property. Japan's experience has important reference significance for establishing and improving a system to deal with extreme disasters. Next is the United States. The southeast and west coast of the United States are also frequently hit by extreme disasters such as hurricanes and floods. The United States has accumulated rich experience in responding to storms and floods in risk assessment, disaster monitoring, flood control projects, three-dimensional shelter construction, urban planning, and humanitarian assistance. Some disaster-resistant building models and flood insurance systems in the United States are also worth learning from. One cannot but mention the Netherlands. The Netherlands is a country with a lot of water and has been fighting with water since ancient times. The Netherlands has well-developed flood control and drainage facilities that can withstand higher levels of flood threats. The Netherlands has reached the world's advanced level in terms of embankment system construction, water conservancy facility operation, and rainwater and sewage diversion, which are worthy of imitation by other countries. Also worth learning is Singapore. Singapore is also an island country with a very high population density, and flooding problems have always plagued this country. However, Singapore has effectively mitigated and responded to the impact of floods through high-standard water infrastructure construction. Singapore's rainwater collection and utilization system and seawater desalination technology are also world-class. In order to effectively combat the threat of floods, more and more new technologies are emerging. First of all, satellite remote sensing technology, drones, detector networks, etc. provide strong support for flood monitoring and early warning. These means can quickly and efficiently monitor meteorological elements and water conditions, determine the possible path, time and threat intensity of floods, and release timely and accurate early warning information to the public to improve the efficiency of prevention and rescue. The use of data analysis and supercomputing technology also makes it possible to refine flood simulations. Secondly, new flood-resistant materials provide better choices for flood control projects, such as ultra-high performance concrete, polyurethane impermeable materials, hot melt adhesive, carbon fiber, etc. These materials have high strength, long life, and simple construction, and can effectively improve the flood prevention and anti-seepage capabilities of water conservancy projects. Some patented anti-seepage walls and anti-floating covers also significantly improve the pressure resistance of flood control projects. In addition, automated water conservancy hubs and early warning systems ensure the safe operation of reservoirs and dams. Sensors can instantly monitor reservoir water levels and dam structural integrity, and smart systems can quickly identify abnormal conditions and take corresponding measures to ensure the normal operation and regulation of the dam and effectively utilize the flood control and storage function of the reservoir. It is worth mentioning that satellite communications and microwave technology have enabled emergency communications at flood sites, and drones have provided powerful tools for underwater search and rescue and operations. These technical means have greatly improved the response capabilities and rescue efficiency of the rescue team and reduced the loss of life and property caused by floods. With the promotion and application of information technologies such as the Internet of Things, big data, and artificial intelligence in the field of flood control and drought relief, flood monitoring, early warning, and defense systems will become increasingly accurate and intelligent. Our understanding and response to floods will reach a higher level, effectively reducing the impact of floods, impact on human society, and avoid losses. Governments and disaster prevention scientific research forces of various countries are also continuing to explore and innovate to develop newer and more suitable flood control technologies. Thank you for liking, leaving a message, subscribing, and turning on the little bell. We will update the latest news from around the world every day.